secret technology, for lack of a better word.
I get the concept, but I'm still not into it.
Let's do this and let's start this Bitcoinlive journey.
Trump is coming out and saying it, but China's been playing it.
I think no president is going to give disclosure.
That would not be possible without you creating a way for people to do that. So welcome, Nick. Thank you very much for joining us today. And obviously, this is all possible because of you and because of Bitcoinlive. So thank you very much for that. So we're obviously sitting on the platform that you created. So I'm really excited to have you here today, to have the time to spend with you, to learn more about who you are, who is Nick, and where did this all evolve from. So,
first of all, thank you for those very kind words, Hedy. I think you and Steve built your own thing, and but I'm grateful that I could be part of that, and that I could help you launch it, and that it has been so successful. So, yeah. No, I'm glad to be part of that journey, and I'm really amazed and happy about what you have established in the crypto Web3 space.
yeah. So obviously my origins are there. This is more about. I think this series is going to be more about the people that I've met that I find super interesting, and people who've done something I think is worth other people seeing, because this is not just about me and helping me with my podcast and getting everything set up, but it's all the other people that have been set up because of you. So like the Deorganized Medias, and then you've got Matt, and you've got other people, and you've got a whole bunch of shows that would not be possible without you creating a way for people to do that.
Yeah, and it has been a long journey with a lot of ups and downs and learning moments. Also a lot of great, splendid moments and great interviews. Actually managed to do some interviews with the really greats like Peter McCormack and Jeff Booth and many others. And we met many cool people along the way, like yourself, but also Matty Satz, Matty Greenspan, the whole crew from Quantum Economics, Paul McNeil, of course. He used to be the crypto curator. But we started out really simple, like, I still remember our very first show, which was in front of a red curtain in the Ardennes when we were on vacation, me and my brother. And it was actually my brother who said, like, come, let's do this. Sometimes there's some Dutch words in between because I'm Dutch. I'm based in Amsterdam. But he said, like, let's do this and let's start this Bitcoinlive journey. And that's where we took our first clip or video of about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I think. And we laid out our vision for where everything was going according to us. And we were pretty spot on. So, and from that moment onwards, we started making shows. And at some point we made, like Steve now does, like we had like a few months where we did like 8 shows a week and then 8 shows of 1 hour each, while both working full-time jobs, which was insane. And I have much respect for what Steve is going through right now. I've been there. But eventually, right, that didn't work, and we had to scale down a little bit. But our idea was to interview as many people in the space as we could, and Jan was very good at getting those people on the shows, really, especially the big ones, the big guests. And I was more of the sort of the backbone and keeping everything on the rails, and getting the shows done and prepared and executed. And that was really good teamwork that we had going until about, I'm just rambling on here, but just.
This is super interesting. Carry on.
Yeah, and then we grew with time, and then at some point we met Paul McNeil. We became really good friends, and that sort of opened new doors. But the real sort of change came when we got banned. Like it's about 2 years into the journey, because we started around 2000. I think it was 2018, the end of 2018, I believe that we started. We got banned about 2 years in because of a certain epidemic that broke out. We were very critical about it. And then we lost YouTube. We lost our entire everything that we built and invested in, and we invested quite a lot of, especially a lot of time and effort, but also quite a lot of money in building that. So that was a really devastating moment. And then you had to sort of repack yourself, reorganize, and reorient, strategize. So I came up with the idea to let other people do shows on our platform, to sort of facilitate shows. And we had quite a huge connection network going by that time. So we start launching other people's shows and our own. So we continue doing interviews, but less interviews, and we were more in the background. And that's when, John, Purple Suede, as he's called, and Taylor, or Pigeon, Style Pigeon, and Matty Sets, and Paul McNeil, and Jack Winswitch, of course, and a few others started doing their shows on our platform. And that was a big success. I think we were one of the first who did that. And then after a while, people also started moving on. They wanted to do new things, and it's very hard to get traction, right? We were not really connected to a specific community, and I also didn't have really time to sort of get involved with different communities, like really involved. So it was very difficult to build community. Community building is really a skill, like a separate skill. I'm okay at it, but I'm not really good at it. And then at some point I met Steve via Jack, who was on the show, and that was sort of the next stage in Bitcoinlive's development, when I said, like, I got this whole week where we're basically doing nothing because I'm working. And Steve said, like, okay, let's fill it up. And he had big plans, and then you got the organized flowing out of that. And I guess that in a nutshell is sort of our development and where we are right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I obviously only got to meet you with the organized, helping Steve there get everything set up and obviously thrashing out. So moving from, I think it was a space every week and one show, Spotlight on a Thursday night, but like a Thursday night for us.
Yeah.
And then obviously saying like morning shows look like they're taking off. So then a morning show was launched. And then obviously the other show, then it was like, okay, well, who else can we start picking in, and then can we add to it and grow it? And now obviously, the AI show started, which then stopped again. Then it's obviously Melanie came on board with her Bitcoin and Beyond. So,
yeah, really cool.
Yeah. And then the nightly show now with Giga Pepe is really good.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because basically Steve is sort of going through the same thing, only much faster than what we did, because he's also sort of, using the organized as a platform for others to do their shows. So it's really cool to see, and I'm really happy that it's a success. And now we're running a lot of shows, and it's becoming really decentralized. And that's basically what it's all about for us. I mean, we also talked and interviewed many more centralized projects. We're not, anti-centralization, because you do need obviously some levels of hierarchy and centralization and outsourcing going on. But our core mission and our ethos is very much focused on to decentralize, and decentralized broadcasting, or deorganized broadcasting, or deorganized medias. That is really, that's really what we want and to promote. And it is becoming really decentralized, right? So that's also kind of fun to see it actually work, and everybody contributing to making it work. So that's really cool.
Yeah, no, I think that's touching back on the centralization versus decentralization. Centralization does make sense at times, because especially when you want to scale, it's very difficult without having components that might be centralized. But obviously, decentralized nature is that people can bring on shows and launch themselves and grow and share content. That's what you and your brother wanted to build, was a platform that allowed for different views to get out into the world and have a place to start from, or just to build out from. So
Yeah, and that there was no censorship, right? We also, I mean, that was another feature of Bitcoin Live. It also had to do with, time that takes time to edit, as you know. But it was also to make everything raw, uncut, and real, right? So basically, our shows have always been, or almost always been, sort of like live streaming. That's also part in our name, like Bitcoin Live is that the live part also has to do with live streaming, and that you want to get the message out as authentic and real as it gets, right? So without any embellishment. Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, again, live and pre-record are like, this will be pre-recorded, but they both have advantages and
Yeah.
disadvantages. So, I mean, live is always good when you really want to have a, like going back to building communities built around, probably more around live content. That's what I've seen versus
Yeah.
pre-record. So you can build an audience because there's an opportunity for, especially on your platform, for direct access. So you
Yeah.
can see the comments come in from the different places. You can communicate. Um, Obviously, on some of the shows that I've been on the live ones, you can actually pull people directly in and they can come
Yeah.
up on stage and talk, which is, it's a different format and way for you to engage with people. So
Yeah, and that makes it really exciting, right? I mean, the fact that people can sort of chime in and even become, sort of get on the show, like in a live stream. Like if somebody, does a shout out to say, "Hey, pull me up," right? You can actually put somebody who's in the chat into the live stream if you want to, right? So that makes it really dynamic and cool and authentic and real, right? So. And yeah, about the decentralization, I think part of that has to do, of course, with Bitcoin, right? We are sort of Bitcoin centric. At least I am. My brother sort of moved on a little bit, but the whole idea sort of creating this sort of decentralized backbone to the world economy, you actually want that decentralized backbone everywhere, right? And then you can scale on top of that if necessary and make it a little bit more centralized if that speeds things up or allows for scaling, as you say. But as long as sort of the foundation and the backbone is decentralized and open and censorship resistant and transparent, I think you can build amazing things. I mean, that's I think also how the Western world achieved its success in the first place. Now it's throwing it away, but that's how we grow. How we became so big and successful.
yeah, well, it's decentralization it allows everyone to have a voice and that there's no control gating because everyone can come in. It makes it super chaotic. And sometimes you can have really good things produced out of that. But sometimes the chaos can make it too noisy that you can't get anywhere, which, I mean, you and I both experienced projects where it's decentralized and it just either dies or just doesn't get out of like talking, and there's too many opinions and you don't get consensus, and there's no way or structure to get the consensus. And some people view consensus as being a central, like you trying to centralize it, but consensus is ultimately the only way we can move forward. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
ideologies are different on decentralization. So what you think decentralization is and what I think it is sometimes are opposite ends of decentralization, if I can put it that way.
yeah. No, definitely. And I think from that competition or from those exchange of views, really good things come about. But like you say, you do need at some point to reach consensus about something in order to build something, right? So yeah, I mean, as soon as you make a decision and you get started on something, you leave stuff out that you didn't do or that you didn't even think of, right? And that somebody else might think is very important, but that you left out. Yeah, so I totally agree with that. Yeah.
So your journey into Web3 and Bitcoin started where 2016, 2018. So where
Yeah.
did you?
Yeah, so the Bitcoinlive as sort of our very first show, I think from the top of my mind, I think that was end of 2018. But we already got involved with crypto in about 2017, like more of sort of like what is it, doing our research and buying some. Actually, the first thing that I bought was Bitcoin. Apparently, that's kind of unique, but but yeah, and then of course a lot of alts. But we were already sort of scouting and doing research and getting involved with different projects and that kind of stuff. But Bitcoinlive itself, I think that was 2018, end of 2018, I think. Yeah. So we go a while back, a way back. Yeah. We had our ups and downs.
So what attracted you to the space then? So you clearly weren't in the space before. You obviously have a different, like your origin story is slightly different. So like who is Nick before you reach and you enter this world of cryptography and Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I actually studied philosophy and cultural anthropology. So that's sort of my academic background. I did take my time to to finish those, but I managed. Uh, I love to read. I read a lot. You can see the books in the background. But the thing that really sort of triggered me into getting involved with Bitcoin and crypto was basically 2007, 2008, the crisis that happened back then. And at that moment, I had very little to no idea about economy or finance or any of that stuff. I was involved with philosophy, so I thought ideas rule the world. I still think ideas rule the world, but I also noticed that economy plays a huge part in shaping those ideas. So there's like a back and forth there. And then, yeah, the crisis happened. And that meant that I started reading Zero Hedge, The Contra Corner from David Stockman. And were a lot of, and the books from Jim Rickards were really good and engaging. And then I sort of got into gold and silver. So I actually had some gold and silver. I still have some gold. I sold most of my silver this year, actually. So I had a nice profit. But because I was in gold and silver and sound money and sort of Austrian economics, at some point Bitcoin came by, and at first it was very small and I sort of missed it. But in 2017, with the build up to sort of that really, crazy high back then, what was it, 18K in the run up. We started noticing it, and we thought like, actually, I think it was Jan who said like, did you notice Bitcoin? And then, I noticed Bitcoin, and then not shortly after that, I think I bought my first Bitcoin, and then some more Bitcoin, and and I'm not sure what Jan did, but he also bought stuff, and then we made all the mistakes you can make with selling and not selling, and getting
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I sat on the sidelines for a very long time and learned. So into about 2010, somebody like a friend of mine said, "Hey, I've got this thing called Bitcoin. Like you can mine it, and like it was super complex." And I was trying to figure out what it was, and I said, "It's the new money." And I'm like, "But I don't understand why." Like I couldn't comprehend. Obviously, sitting in the fiat world, you don't know until you, as they say, like orange pilled, until you actually start learning. And he said, "Oh, I'll give you some, and then like I'll set up the miner on your computer, and you got to install this stuff." I'm like, no, I'm like those. That's the height of like virus time. Like I don't need viruses. I don't need anything. Like thanks, but no. It sounds super scammy,
Yeah.
when somebody's talking to you. And then obviously the pizza thing hit, and I was like, oh yeah, that's super interesting. But still, then Silk Road happened, and I was like, okay, this is like, I don't know. I get the concept, but I'm still not into it, and I left it.
And Gox.
Yeah, Gox, and I was just, but from 2008, that's when I really started. The thing that people don't get yet with Bitcoin, and why you have to invest time to understand what it actually is. It's not necessary. I mean, it's good to read the white paper.
Mhm.
It's not easy, but it's good to read it if you've got the time, but maybe not first off, because you might never come back to it. But learn the fundamentals. There's enough, like Sailor's got enough. What's the other one? I can't think of
The
his.
Bitcoin standards. I
Um,
love the Bitcoin standard.
Yeah, no, that as well. But it's what people don't get is that the more you learn about Bitcoin, the better you understand finance.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It actually teaches you like, oh, okay, so now I understand how money works. Now I know what money is. This is how money works. Then this is where Bitcoin fits in with the monetary system, and these are the things these are the reasons why it was created for us. So I think we've got, it's going to get easier, obviously, but
yeah, no, I totally get what you mean. I mean that one of the things I noticed, because basically our platform is educational, right? It's also fun, but mostly educational. And one of the things that you notice when you talk to people also outside of the Bitcoin and crypto community, especially outside of the crypto community, is that you have three big problems, right? The first one is, like you say, the technical part. Like how for people it's very easy to become confused, and it becomes too complicated. If you say proof of work, you lost everybody almost like immediately. So that's one really big issue. And then the second issue, like you say, like what the hell is money, right? So that's how does Bitcoin fit in with money? What is money, right? People think like that banknotes in their pocket are money. It's a sort of money, right? But money has many different shapes and forms and guises. And then thirdly, which is also difficult, but it's becoming more easy by the day, is you had to explain like the current system is failing, right? It's not working, and all the suffering and all the misery and all the dislocations and even wars and conflict and riots and whatever it's all sort of connected with a failing system. But for most people, they are all separate things and they don't see that connection. So those three, you got those three things that you have to explain in one sentence or a few sentences to people. It's like nearly impossible, right? So somehow you have to trick them to, get inside of the rabbit hole and start doing their own research. But so you have to entice them in some form. Those are the three difficult stumbling blocks along the way, right? The technical part, the money part, and then why is the current system failing? And basically that was the other thing. We also wanted to educate people, not only, especially that was my personal reason, was not per se that you get very rich or whatever and buy a Lamborghini. It's nice, but I don't have a Lamborghini. But mostly to save yourself and to save your savings, right? Because of the third reason, and the system is failing, and you sort of know where it all ends up. You basically trying to tell people, get a lifeboat or at least a life jacket, right? Get some sets. And that was sort of the core mission of Bitcoin, and then also spreading the ideas of decentralization, because the current system is failing because it is not decentralized. It is hyper centralized, and it's only getting more centralized by the day, and that's why it's failing. And so all those things are sort of connected, and they that's sort of it's a back and forth, and you learn how to message and what works and what doesn't work and what turns people off and what doesn't. And you learn to be a better communicator and also to control your emotions. Like Bitcoin teaches you how to control your emotions. I often call it also not decentralized ethos, but also a Stoic ethos. Like if you study the Stoa, Marcus Aurelius or Seneca or any of those great Stoic philosophers, it's all about controlling your emotions. And it's kind of funny because people say, yeah, but why is it Stoic, right? Because Bitcoin is erratic, it's very volatile. But it's that volatility that forces you to control your emotions, right? To not get excited when Bitcoin does this and that. So it is it is very interesting. We live in interesting times.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin. So there's another series that I'm doing at the same time, but this is with my brother, funnily enough. Um, and we're exploring money. And when you talk about the volatility of Bitcoin, one Bitcoin still is one Bitcoin. One sat is one sat, and people just
That's what
relate.
you learn.
Yeah, but people look at it and go, well, but the dollar value, because I've had this with my parents and my brother. It's been a while for my brother as well. Like to get him in, and other people that I've slowly tried to bring to the realization. And what a lot of them don't comprehend is the volatility is you're watching the volatility in the financial system. There's no volatility in Bitcoin. It's
Yeah.
just and it's the same as anything else. Like if you have the US dollar and you have the Zimbabwean dollar, and the Zimbabwean dollar does this, which one is the problem? Is it the US
Yeah.
dollar or is it the Zimbabwe dollar? Like people can't put those two together. And when you frame it that way, then people go, wait, okay, so you mean
Yeah.
like, so I don't understand. And then it's like, okay, well, where's the volatility? And then you can see, and it's zooming out to understand what it actually delivers. Like Bitcoin. I mean, a lot of things that the biggest thing for me with Bitcoin is people don't know the difference between a network and the currency. So there's
Yeah.
two different elements to it, and a lot of people don't understand the difference. So when you go like, if we talk about the network, oh, it uses so much electricity. I'm like, yep. You know why? Because you have an asset in there, and that's the shield against anybody taking it from you. It's the
Yeah.
safest network in the world. And
Yeah.
wouldn't the safest network in the world use a lot of electricity? Our
Yeah.
banks use a lot of electricity to secure our money, don't they? Yes. Okay. So servers use a lot. Yes. Okay. So it's the same. We just see it as being a lot more, but you can imagine that it's reducing attack vectors. And they're like, oh, well, it's
Yeah.
slow. It's like, well, that's by design. And it's
Yeah.
also because it's actually time. Like that's the
Yeah.
one thing that freaked me out when I learned it, because it just changed your whole concept. It's like, no, the 10 minutes is time. There's a unit of time built into the
Yeah.
blockchain, meaning we can time everything now because
Yeah.
we know that there's a 10 TikTok every 10 minutes. We know that it's
Yeah.
going to hit TikTok every 10 minutes, a new block on average, of course. It's not always the case.
Yeah. Sometimes a bit
It's a
more.
bit longer, but on average.
Yeah.
So, and that's got to do with calculations on space time and being able to broadcast and do stuff if you wanted to do like interstellar transactions, because we need that space for it to arrive in the chain and for the distance of communication, which is crazy when you think about it. But this is the rabbit hole. Like you
Yeah.
have to start at the top. What are the two? Okay, here's chain and here's token. These are how they operate. This runs on
Yeah.
this payment rail like Visa. This is your Visa rail. This is how I pay. There's a fee. We don't see the fee today, but now you are your own bank and you have to pay to travel
Yeah.
on the toll road.
Yeah, many people also don't understand the mining part, right? That really sort of trips them up. But like what you said with the movement of currencies, I remember I think years ago when I sort of read one of Jim Rickards' books, and of course he's like more of a gold bug, and definitely not a Bitcoin supporter. But he said like, yeah, gold doesn't move, right? Gold is just a rock. So the price of gold is actually the dollar sort of moving and the cross rates between currencies, right? The gold cannot do anything. So that sort of flips your mindset. And another thing is, of course, that people think if something goes up in value, that's per se a good thing. But what they don't realize is actually that your currency is going down. that's another flip side that most people are not fully aware of until you sort of point it out. Like for example, let's say you have inflation in Europe and your stuff gets more expensive. It basically means that you're part of a big, you could say like you're all part of a cryptocurrency, which is called the euro, which is not entirely untrue because it's also digital in many regards. And you cannot escape because everybody forces you to use it, because you have to pay expenses, you have to pay taxes, so you cannot really get out of it, even if you wanted to, unless you move abroad. But then you have to pay taxes, of course, if you want that, capital controls. But basically, when the stuff gets more expensive, it just means that your cryptocurrency, your euro, becomes less valuable, right? Yep. And it's really that simple. But yeah, most people don't realize that. At least, more and more people are becoming aware of it. So that's good. But one of the dangers with people becoming aware and of the dislocations and all the problems is that they uh, are that they're inclined to ask governments to step in and fix it, right? And that's sort of the big worry that I have and that you see around the world, is that as people become desperate and they don't know what to do, and they see all these wars and all that suffering, that they actually keep asking for more and more of the problem to fix it, which of course makes it worse and eventually breaks down. So that's another angle that's difficult for people to understand, that it's actually government intervention for the most part that is causing these issues in the first place, and then making them worse. Not entirely, right? I mean, I'm not saying that all the stuff that governments do is bad, but yeah, a lot of it, especially central banking, is problematic.
It all boils back to, if Bitcoin will lead you down roads and pathways to question the reality that we have today, and will challenge your perception of that reality, and then allow you to go, okay, well, what is the what does this make me feel like? Which one makes me feel safer and better? And that's a decision everyone has to make. So I break things down mostly, which is, you start with, there's always a narrative running. So whether that's from government, central banks, there's always a narrative. That's the story we're fed. And you and I have been in the game long enough to read between lines and to see, okay, well, I can see this narrative. And then obviously that narrative plays into, your perception of the world, because your perception changes based on that narrative. And then
And
that
then your
narrative,
actions too.
yeah. And then there's a sentiment. Well, how do I feel now? So you start at the top and you come down to, and once you hit feeling, it's very difficult to change people's
Yeah.
opinions once it's in feeling. And that's the hack that everything uses. Headline, whatever you want to do, X war, this warmonger, this person is now, the next, wants to be the next ruler of the world. And so the narrative keeps playing out, and people just take headline and assume that that's correct. We've all been hacked since Facebook.
Yeah,
We assume that our network knows better than us, so we trust network. The sum of our network is where we get our information from, rather than relying on ourselves and critical thinking. And then it goes back to stoicism, pulling yourself out of the situation, removing emotion, looking at it. Then you have first principles, look at it from a first principles perspective, question everything.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, a lot of what you say is spot on, right? I think one of the problems is also that people are too much involved with what is outside of their action radius, right? So one of the things that Bitcoin teaches you is to be humble and to focus on, the things that you can directly influence around yourself and improve upon. And then your action radius becomes bigger. And as it grows, you can influence more things and in your favor. But most people start on the other end, right? They sort of think about world problems and what should I think about all of that stuff? But that makes you very easy to manipulate and to steer, because how in the hell could you know what should be done in China or Russia or wherever, right? I mean, you have hardly any information, and all the information that you get is being fed to you. So yes, yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think many people should be aware of the fact that that most of the that there's a narrative warfare going on, and that narrative warfare is only ramping up, right? Because these governments have an issue and these central banks have an issue, right? The system is untenable. This, why would they tell you the truth about many things? right? Because they're deflecting and distracting, right, from the core issue, which is that's themselves, right, and what they're doing. And I think one of the other things that sort of touches upon what you just said is, the thing that Steve is building with Deorganize and what we were building with Bitcoinlive. You're creating this community of different people, like real people that you actually know, because you can interact with them, you can talk with them. And that's also a network, but that's a network that you're part of, and with people that you know and that you build relationships with, and that the information that you get from them and their expertise and their perspectives is much more valuable than sort of the network that is the newspaper or your television set or whatever, right? So because you get a way more value from these different peoples and these different angles.
Yeah, well, we've gone, like you said, we've gone so far out of what we can control, a radius of control. We've gone so far out of that, and we've all been victim to that and all have done it. But when you come back to where you can control, that's about rebuilding community. So what we've lost in our pursuit of everything, we've now got to where we could trust the news. The news was part of our community. We had community. We discussed it. We had debate. Over time, all of those things have eroded and communities have broken down. And the one thing I found with Web3 is a lot of people are building communities now. So you're finding people and you build a network of people that you have debate with and you hear different perspectives. And that helps you to grow and look at the world completely differently compared to what we had before, where you had a few, the newspaper, you had the traditional media, and we could see that. And it's actually been proven, because it was in a court case in the US, that it's opinion. So news is merely somebody's opinion of events that took place and not necessarily fact. And when we view it through that lens, it makes life a lot easier for us, because we can go, this is somebody's interpretation and opinion based on this. So this footage, and even footage we've seen, is like some of the footage is from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not actually now, but they're portraying it as now. And then it's easy to deep fake things. We've had so many deep fakes, which people don't realize how easy it is to do that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, AI is going to be a real challenge. Yeah, but Bitcoin can actually help also with AI, right? So that's another thing. They are not sort of contradictory. They are actually going hands in hand. I mean, if we do it smartly, right, Bitcoin and AI will be friends and reinforce each other and find each other, I think, over time, because I think AI without Bitcoin will be doomed to fail.
no, I don't think it'd be doomed to fail. We can't stop it. The cat's out of the bag now. So we can't stop the progression outside of us no longer existing. It's going to, even after we don't exist, it'll continue. But when you're talking about Bitcoin, is we need to find a way that the problem we have is that there's a runaway on it, and we need to, it's not about controlling AI, it's about having a base level that we can all verify, so it's verifiable. So can we have a ledger that allows us to interact with AI to say, can we verify? So remember, like in Bitcoin, we always say, don't trust, verify. So the chain can allow us to verify AI. And by virtue of verifying AI, it'll give us a little bit more confidence in what we're seeing in it. Or you and I will give us some confidence to verify.
Yeah, and I think, but also the other way around, I think AI also needs Bitcoin to verify what its actions are based on, right? Because otherwise its actions might become unhinged and actually hurt itself without even knowing it, because it does need like reliable information. And most sort of centralized data sets, especially now, are prone to manipulation, right? And I think Goodhart's law sort of teaches basically in every possible domain that, at least as it concerns human beings, is that they are gonna fix the results, right? If you're sort of measuring for a certain standard, people are gonna game that standard because they know that they're being measured on it. So and you see it everywhere. Yeah, I mean, even in anthropology, right? It's like it's just that's human nature. So data sets are as good as the people or the systems that control the data, and I think that's where Bitcoin shines, right? Because it's immutable, and it's basically what you say before with the power. It has this power field or power shield around it that makes it the most impenetrable system on planet Earth that we currently know of. So, and it might also help slow things down, right? Because of the 10-minute block, it might actually, because things are speeding up. And this was something that Gerald pointed out, who does proof of work. Bitcoin might actually help give AI more of a human pace and to slow things down a bit, the development of everything. So I think that's also a valid point. But yeah, but like you say, also with the deep fakes and all that kind of stuff, right? Before you know it, we don't know what's what, and we probably already don't know what's what. But then it becomes even more of a problem, and then you basically only have two options: either you use Bitcoin, or you need like a gigantic world government to stamp blue check marks on what's real and what's not real, right? So you basically have two extremes. Either we do go one route and decentralize it and make it, I think, more trustworthy, or you go the other route and you basically need like a tyrannical government to tell you what's what.
Well, we already have that because I've seen
Yeah.
seen the build up. I've seen the build up already of government agencies that their sole purpose is for you to go to them for them to tell you whether what you're seeing is true or not, and
Yeah.
and for them to verify. And it's like, why would I phone you for you to tell me what the truth is? Like, we can't have the government. I don't think the government there is to be the custodian of what is true or not. Like, they're not the
No.
that
Historically, that
individuals. That's us as an individual. We should be the discerning ones of, and we should be able to be the arbiter of truth. It shouldn't be the government is arbiter of truth, because that's when we land up in problems, because we're the checks and balances for, like, it's very difficult to have an arbiter of truth.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and historically that led to bloodshed, right? I mean, the government would love to have that role, but that doesn't work in the long term, even for the government, and that leads to gigantic problems. And yeah, so no, but that's not the road. Yeah.
So I wanted to touch base on something, because you hit something really interesting about CBDs, and we've got them coming in Europe in August. They're launching.
Yeah, October.
Which
I
is
think.
there hasn't been a lot of news about it other than other people telling us about it. So I was quite keen
Yeah.
to hear. But I think they're only using it for interbank to start with.
Yeah, to start with, but they do want to do wholesale. So they are gonna do both, and well, people who know me know my views on CBDCs. I'm very pessimistic. I do think they will come, right? Because I think too many people are asleep, and the people who are running the EU at the moment want it, clearly. And yeah, I think the only positive thing is that it will probably take a little time before it becomes really bad, because they can't do it immediately, and maybe they even don't want to make it bad. But I doubt that latter part. Knowing governments and the problems that they're in right now, it's it makes me want to leave Europe, to be honest.
Yes, I think it's It's going to be ubiquitous. It's going to be everywhere because everywhere is talking about CBDCs, and I think the reason for that is that the technology will allow for a more like the speed at which things can do and how the programmability of the money will create more value. But what people don't realize is it also flows the other way, where that it being programmable also means that you're potentially going to lose physical cash. And also the programmability of that means that now you have even less ownership and control over that. So you literally are handing over way more control over to entities that maybe are unelected. And I think that's what people don't get, is that you're giving it over to unelected officials. And that's the only concern I have around CBDCs. I think they could serve a massive purpose.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think we need to. I think they are important because we can't have private money. Because if you go to the other extreme and you say we have private money, then Tether and Circle can turn off your money as well. So
stable coins.
So we need to find a real balance. This is where Bitcoin comes into it again, because Bitcoin is decentralized. So there are ways of censorship in the system, and we shouldn't lie to ourselves that there isn't censorship. But I think that's the primary reason for running a miner. That's the whole purpose. You are a bank. You should run a miner. A, you secure the network. B, it's not about the rewards. It's about securing yourself and ensuring that you are decentralized. And that's the value add that people don't get from running. And you can get a 12-watt miner now. It's just that mine, but it's mining just so that you have access. You can run ones that aren't miners and you're just running a node without all that. But that's what people don't get, is that that's how you can secure yourself if we're looking in that angle. But private money, I'm worried about. Really worried about private money.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean, because what meant, like you say, stable coins are potentially CBDCs, right? I mean, they have, you can use them like that. And then they would be unregulated CBDCs. And on top of that, of course, most cryptos are pretty centralized themselves, right? So most cryptos also have a lot of similarities to CBDCs. So you do want sort of law and order. You do want some sort of entity to keep track of things. But as you say, you also want to keep track of the entities that are keeping track of things, especially your governments. So I totally agree with running nodes and miners, and that these institutions can do both, the tracking and the securing and the sort of which allows us to validate what they're doing and what they say they're doing, that they're doing it. And Gerald also pointed out that that probably, very likely, there will be a connection between energy companies and Bitcoin miners, right? That they merge into one and the same thing, and banks will also merge. So the bank will probably be also an energy company and a Bitcoin mining company and a bank at the same time. And then on top of that, you also have Jason Lowry, who points out that it also have huge defensive capabilities and interest from the DoD and the Pentagon and so forth, because you can secure information and critical infrastructure, and also what AI can get access to. Right, so perhaps it would be a bank, an energy company, a Bitcoin mining company, and a strategic defense asset, or whatever you want to call it. So these things will all merge into one thing at some point. And I think like you said, like Bitcoin, and there are these other decentralized crypto out there, right? I'm a big fan of Decred, also DigiByte, Monero, right? There are good projects out there, but they miss the momentum and the sheer scale of Bitcoin, right? And its adoption, I should say.
Well, those Monero especially had the same as Bitcoin had. So until the value proposition came and enough people started talking about it, governments poo-pooed it the whole way. Bad energy, da 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 da. Why do we need it? What are you doing this for? And then now they've realized that there's a value add. I think they knew it all along.
Yeah.
It was just waiting for a point at which it became valuable enough or big enough for them to be able to utilize it, like anything. Monero, I'm really interested in. And I think it's, again, because it's dropped off so many exchanges, that's the reason for it. It's very difficult to get hold of. And for obvious reasons, because it's a privacy. It preserves your privacy. So that's the reason why a lot of people don't want it. So Bitcoin, governments love Bitcoin because it's an open ledger. Everybody can see it. So
and Litecoin is of course very interesting too, because it has also the private element attached to it now, and it's like the smaller brother of Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin transactions will become very costly, especially for us mere mortals. To make a transaction cost will will become quite expensive if you don't have a lot of Bitcoin. So yeah, the future is clearly going towards Bitcoin. I mean, I have no doubt about it, unless it gets hacked. But I don't see how it would get hacked, unless maybe with quantum computers or something. But yeah, you can also make it quantum resistant. And as soon as AI and Bitcoin become merged, AI will protect it. So yeah, and I think there will be room for a lot of other cryptos out there, right? It won't be just Bitcoin. And I think, like you say, I think there might actually be a role for CBDCs, as long as what we said in the beginning, if the backbone or the backdrop is Bitcoin, and that's decentralized, and we use it to keep track of our governments and our institutions, and they play ball. Then there's room for CBDCs, right? Because then there's always an exit. You can always exit via Bitcoin, and they can't go out of whack, right? Things can't get out of whack. Sorry.
Yeah, no, we can only have a multiple currency or multiple cryptocurrency world, because the same as today, we have multiple applications that we run. We don't just have one application, we have multiple applications. So if we view it from the lens of like applications, Bitcoin does this really well. That's why you have Bitcoin. Then you have Litecoin. It does this really well. That's why we have Litecoin. This is Monero because it does this really well. Then we have, even if people have problems with XRP, fine, but it serves its purpose. And everything else, Ethereum serves its purpose. It has a very different way of operating, and you're just choosing which application I need for what purpose. And I think we're going to get to that point where it'll be, okay, and CBDCs serve a purpose, and we'll use it for one purpose, and then we'll have all the rest of them. Or it serves no purpose, because people will just go, well, actually, I don't want CBDCs, I want Bitcoin, or I want Litecoin. That's what I want you to pay me. And we're going to get to that world of that. I think governments are going to have to build reserves. And I think citizenship is going to change in the future, whereby you may have to invest in the country in Bitcoin in order to get citizenship. And potentially you just put one Bitcoin or 0.1 of a Bitcoin and you never pay tax again, potentially as well.
Yeah.
Because they could use that in their, the government's going to need to use it anyway.
Yeah. I think you're totally right. And I think Bukele with El Salvador is already sort of doing that. I think over there you can, for one Bitcoin, get your citizenship, and with all the perks that go along with it. So, and that's probably Max Kaiser whispering in his ear. But yeah, that's clearly the future, right? I mean, that's where we're going. And I think also, when you look at Trump, I'm not, he's a mixed bag, and he does a lot of crazy stuff. And we don't know exactly where it will end. But, some of the stuff that he is doing is clearly good, right? I think moving towards a strategic Bitcoin reserve, even as collateral, is a good move. And I can also understand that you would have like a stockpile of digital currencies or assets or whatever he calls it. I mean, that also makes sort of sense. And that they treat it as a portfolio instead as a reserve, I can also understand. I'm actually writing something on what Trump might be doing. So I'm actually now in the business also writing articles, which is a lot of fun. So a big drop is probably coming next week, which will be very cool because it sort of touches upon a lot of stuff that we're talking about. But yeah. So he's doing good stuff, and the tariffs. Yeah, I think it's a negotiating tool or ploy that he's using. But I also think he's trying to do a lot of stuff with, hit a lot of birds with one stone. But I think it's mostly a negotiating tool that he's using against China. But anyway, I'm not sure if you want to go that route. So
No, as I said, I've said it from the very beginning when people were like, "Oh," and I'm like, "Okay, what people don't see is that there's a lot of theater, but at the same time, he tells us what he's going to do. We just have
yeah,
to. Sometimes it's not as like in your face as some of his other statements, but he does because this time around, in his second term, he's more of a politician this time, so he understands the landscape a lot better this time, where the first presidency was different, and that's why people are finding it difficult to understand him because he sometimes is cryptic
yeah,
and people don't get that. And then when he comes out and does stuff, he's not telling you the full story. And there's clear reasons for that because it doesn't matter what he says, the press are going to make up their own minds and people are going to have their own opinions about it. So he doesn't have to explain it and the truth will reveal itself. As far as tariffs are concerned, I think all he's trying to do is he's renegotiating free trade across the world. That's all he's trying to do. And as part of that renegotiation, he's finding out who wants to be in what bucket. Like, do you want to be like a friend or do you want to be a foe in the trade wars, which have been going on for a while? As far as China's concerned, I understand why the posture he's taking with China. And the reason he's taking that posture is because China is a potentially a peer now. I don't think they're a peer yet, but they're definitely a peer, like a near peer rival
yeah,
in the world domination. And Europe and the UK at the moment are trying to play in the big boy playground, and they're not even close. We are insignificant. Between
yeah,
China, Russia, and the US, we are insignificant. They really have no, and
no,
Europe is learning it, and we're going to pay, and the future
yeah,
generation pay for the mistakes of not having, invested in the things we should have invested in as Europe, like as a European Union and as a Europe, as in security. And I think
yeah. Yeah,
China's playing a card. This is Trump is coming out and saying it, but China's been playing it all along.
yeah,
And you can't afford for Russia and China to align. If they align too closely and they align too closely with Europe, Europe's basically in the middle now. So they're fighting for
yeah.
their scraps.
Now, yeah, that's Mackinder's theory, and that's one of the reasons that America was always focused on dividing Russia and Europe, and putting their military base in Germany, and becoming close friends with Ukraine and Poland to sort of keep splitting them. And I think personally, I think they also uh, were involved with Nord Stream, but but like you say, like I think it's basically a three-player game, and if you're playing a three-player game, it's always two against one. And for a long time now, it has been mostly Russia and China against America, even though China was playing both sides, and Russia probably too. But now America is, I think, trying to cozy up to Russia because there's a lot of similarities in their goals, I think, and also to wean it off China, right, and to isolate China. And then this is clearly also a ploy to isolate China as much as possible, and to force people to make a decision. Choose China or the China alliance, or America. And at the moment, they still hold the strongest cards, right? They still have the biggest military and probably other assets, plus of course the dollar reserve, the currency, the world reserve currency. So those two things, plus the world is still not ready yet for the new, this new deglobalization that's happening, right? The most countries are not yet there yet. Europe is still living in the past. They think, that people follow rules, and that you can sort of tell people, you write a contract or you write a law or something, and then people will follow what you tell them to do, right? That's or the UN is basically bankrupt, and these sort of global institutions that we used to rely on, they are on their way out. And that's what Europe was leaning on, right? Also the International Court of Human Rights, which is based in Den Haag in Holland. For most people around the world, it's become sort of like a joke, right? It's like a political kangaroo court, basically. So, I think Europe means well, but they completely missed the boat, and they were stuck in the past, and they didn't have the foresight, or like you say, the investments into the future. So I totally understand why they want CBDCs, right? Because there's, upheavals and discontent and all that kind of stuff, and they're still waging war for some reason. So yeah, you need CBDCs to make it work. So and that's like the worst case for CBDCs. Like if you have a government with that amount of control and those intentions, that's not a good combination.
The current problem we have at the moment is that the US can't afford to fight on both both sides. So they can't afford to fight in the Atlantic and North, and they can't afford to fight in the Pacific. So they have to choose who's going to be the frenemy at the moment. And Russia has more resource than China, and China's economy is built on manufacture, meaning they need people to send manufacturing there. Plus, the US dollar has to drop. So he has to play the game of dropping the value of the US dollar because they need to be competitive, because they are, with this decoupling of manufacturing around the world, making it viable to bring it back again. You need a cheap US dollar. So you need the US dollar to be less. Europe has played its cards incorrectly for a multitude of reasons. And I think we won't know for a couple of years why the road was paved this way versus another way. Because I think Europe could have actually created a longer lasting peace agreement, and you don't need the US to come in and do that. And I think they could have solved the problem before it started. But as per usual, I saw the war as the West dumping all of its old ammunitions off that were going to be like the old stockpiles. And then because we're going to be, or we are in a recession, they have to print the money and pump the money out to keep the jobs and to buy, and all the military expenditure keeps the numbers looking great. And that's an easy way to do it. And if we go to war, great. Plus, Europe hasn't been in a hot war for a long time, so let's go get some training. So that's why North Korea sent their troops, was because they want they want live war, because there hasn't been one for a while to test your capabilities.
Yeah, and that's also, I by the way, I totally agree with all those points. It's actually, I raised them myself too. So total alignment there. And but that's definitely also the reason why we should stop this war immediately, because the longer it goes on and the more practice these countries get at waging hot wars with these new technologies and testing these new technologies, at some point they will have learned, how to operate, and maybe expand the conflict zone, right, or test them in other places or on other populations. So I think the more peace we can spread, and the quicker we can stop these wars and these conflicts, especially the hot wars, the safer the world gets, right? Because the less practice these governments get at, using their toys and sacrificing their populations and rolling out measures to save us and protect us. And demonize other countries in order to distract their populations from stuff that they're doing. Because usually it's like the kettle calling the what's the saying
The
that
pot black.
yeah, that's it. Yeah. So yeah, no, and then also with China, absolutely. So that's one of the reasons why I think the tariffs came together with the Federal Reserve tightening, right? Because normally the Federal Reserve should already have, uh, uh, printed tons of. I mean, if you look at the Fed's balance sheet, it's not moving, right? It's stuck. While Japan is like, I'm not sure if you're following Japan, but Japan looks like it's in a critical state at the moment, and that's sort of the linchpin of the world's economy, right? If they don't start intervening, then we have a huge problem. And that's also why I think at some point China, because it's a sort of like grandstanding, China and America are just sort of showing who's boss, and that they won't to save face, and but they both know that they can't let this let it blow up, right? That it would blow up in both their faces, and they're both not ready for that. Nobody's ready for that. So at some point there will be an intervention.
Yeah, people, if you people read headlines, but it's mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
So people don't realize that like this is just like a game of chicken between the two
Yeah.
of them, but
Yeah.
they can't afford for it to topple because they both lose. So and other countries are going to the world loses essentially. So it's really a game of how far am I willing to take it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how far are you willing to take it? Like I'm serious. Are you serious? It's just this
Yeah.
little game, and potentially the game is rigged anyway.
Yeah.
It's because most of the time it's rigged because there's an outcome that they're looking for. And some
Yeah.
of those outcomes could be if we have the likelihood of a recession that we are in one, or it is going to be, or it's going to last until the middle of next year, fighting a longer war in certain places in the world is going to be more difficult because money is going to get even tighter. And when money
Yeah.
gets tighter, sentiment changes in countries, and people go, I don't want to spend the money anymore. I don't want you to use my money, which is tax, not the government's money. Again, another thing that people forget, it's our money, as in.
Yeah. And we are the government, right? The government is not a separate entity. Technically, we are the government.
Depends
It's another
on by country. It depends on the definition by
Yeah.
country. It's the same as freedom of speech. We assume that we have freedom of speech is absolute, but it's not in Europe. So we don't have absolute freedom of speech. Where in the US, they have absolute freedom of speech. And there's a difference between the wording. So we believe that we have freedom of speech, but we actually don't. So our speech can be curtailed in Europe,
Yeah,
which is
definitely.
strange.
And that's also where the CBDCs fit in, of course.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we've gone all the way through politics, and
Yes.
I was really interested. You touched on. I was going to ask you about quantum, but we already touched on how quantum could potentially make Bitcoin not as safe as it is at the moment. I'm pretty sure they're going to solve that. I've read a few things about that, so I think we'll get
Yeah.
there. We'll get there.
Yeah, I think technologies are tools, and you can use them negatively or positively, right? And I think Bitcoin and the miners and the community, they are also involved in that area, right? So, and they will get more and more involved. And I think quantum can also be used to make Bitcoin more resistant and more resilient. So I think it's sort of like in Dutch you call it wapenwedloop. I'm not sure what the English word is, but sort of like it gets better over time. You get sort of like this war between two different you get attacks and defense, and then the defense gets better, and then the attack gets better. And there's probably an English word for that.
Yeah, I can't think of it at the moment. The thing that I found interesting about quantum was I think quantum feels like the personal computer for AI.
Yeah.
So AI will be our interface into quantum, because I don't think we can do, like, there's traditional computing that we have today, and then there's quantum. And I think AI might be that conduit that allows us to, and it'll choose, like it does today with some of them, is like, what's the best way to do it? And it'll give us that choice. And that's my personal thing. I think AI is the interface to quantum, but I might be wrong. I don't know everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it sort of fits, right? Also because of the capacity, AI would align with quantum, right? Because of the sheer processing power that's involved. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then for us to interact with that amount of information, already, right, you basically need an AI for many things in order to make sense of stuff. So yeah, as the amount of information increases exponentially, then you need even more help from AI.
Yeah, well, I just think it'd
Moving
be
forward.
agenic AI. So you'll have like agents that are working with quantum, because you need that that compute power, for lack of a better word, that power, that raw power to go out and solve a problem.
Yeah.
So for us, it might be too, well, for you and I, it'd be too difficult to.
Yeah. No, I'm not a quantum expert.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
cool. So where do you see the future? So what do you have on the horizon? What does the future look like for you? Have you seen any signals, any noise that's, in between the noise, seen some signals, any trends emerging?
No, definitely. Yeah. Well, one of our shows is called The Bigger Picture, and that it has that name for a reason. It's always fun to zoom out and to look at everything that's going on. So that's also why I like geopolitics. But one of the trends that for me is clear as day is that there's also a whole thing going on with UAPs and UFOs, and probably there's stuff about humanity that goes much farther than we can imagine. And that's a trend that is, going to blow up, I think, under Trump. I think no president is going to give disclosure, because it's not really in their interest to disclose everything. But we will get information, and a lot of that information will be mind-blowing to a lot of normies, I call them. People who are sort of not following this story. I think already with the geopolitics and with Bitcoin and the financial system, for many people this is hard to believe and hard to wrap their minds around. But once we start talking about UAPs and flying saucers and that kind of stuff, right, then people are sort of tuning out. But yeah, that's a trend. That's a clear trend. There's something really big there, and I think, in my opinion, it's all connected. But it's very difficult to get your finger on what exactly is going on. So you sort of have a general feeling. Matthew Pines, for example, who's also into Bitcoin and crypto, he's also involved with Skywatcher as one of their advisors. He's a very smart dude. But he sort of has this same sort of layout that I have. That at the center of it all is it has to do also with UAPs and this sort of secret technology, for lack of a better word, which is gonna be revealed partly and put into use, probably by the US. But once the US does it, China, Russia will also have to show their cards. So it will be. I think this administration, things will get really crazy, like really, really crazy.
Yeah, well, I've seen a lot more coverage of stuff, and obviously Trump came out and said that there is a aeroplane, what is it, the F-47 has already been tested and flown all over the world. So that might be what people have been seeing as something that is beyond. But the military, getting back to talking about the military is what we fail to forget is what we see today is anywhere between 3 to 10 generations behind what they're already playing with. So
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
no, definitely. Yeah, no, I fully agree, and and also with AI, right? I mean, the things that we use, that like ChatGPT or Grok, right? That's not state of the art AI, right? They're not going to give the public state, their actual level of AI that they have access to. That doesn't make any sense. So there must be a way higher level of AI out there that they have access to. But considering the fact that how far Grok and ChatGPT already are, it is hard to fathom like what kind of AI they have access to. And Ray Kurzweil and the singularity, right? I mean, I know many people who are in AI hate the word singularity, or general intelligence and super intelligence, and that kind of jargon and buzzwords. But you have to sort of think like, oh my god, like if this is the AI that we have access to, like what kind of AI must they have access to, right? And what kind of weapon systems does that allow for? And yeah, and if you then connect that with this UAP thing, right? What is really going on, right? I mean, you can totally understand that the stakes are really high, and you can why China and Russia and America are doing what they're doing with these stakes, right? You can sort of imagine that you play hardball, and that is personally, I think we're going through a great filter, like the Fermi paradox, like that humanity right now is sort of navigating a really difficult and very fragile and precarious situation where technology becomes so powerful on so many terrains, and it's reinforcing each other, like it's a positive feedback loop. So all these technologies are reinforcing each other and growing exponentially, and it's going way faster than government and regulation can keep up with. That power politics comes back. We haven't had seen power politics for almost 100 years. Well, that's not true, right? We had the Cold War, let's say from the end of the Cold War, at least that we were aware of, right? Probably in the background it was still there, but yeah, that's coming back, like power politics, beyond the rule of law and beyond, you basically get a new world order, right? That they're fighting about. So
yeah, well, it's all everything. Order is born out of chaos,
yep,
and too much order leads to chaos because there's a rebelling to it. So we have this concept. It's like the phoenix. The phoenix rises and then it goes back, and it's born out of the ashes again, and we reinvent ourselves. I think the technology that we're looking at is the UAP side. Is a lot of it is going to be our own technology. We've already developed it.
yeah,
The other side of it as well is that if we may not be alone on our own planet,
yeah,
is the other side of it. And
that's the other side.
yeah, that's the other side of it, is that we may not be alone, and we may have never been alone. Is the other side of the other side of that is that if this technology, if we look at what we've created just in the last 50 years or even 70 years in technology and how we've advanced, anything that could have been people, and then we look at the relics we have on our planet, it points, everything is pointing towards a previous generation or a previous, maybe ourselves, where we lost it all or left or whatever, but it certainly shows that there was an intelligence that was far superior to what we are capable of today. So
Yeah,
that's the super
yeah,
interesting thing for me.
yeah. No, I agree, and that's also sort of as much as you can say about it, right? Because beyond that, it becomes pure speculation, which is fun. And there's there's many options, right? There's infinite options. But what you say, that's sort of like the base case, what you can sort of distill from from the whole thing. That yeah, I agree with that assessment. Yeah, but it's really mind blowing, of course, right? I mean, it goes completely against what we have been told, what we believe, and yeah, and who knows what's possible, right? So I mean, one of the things that keeps me really happy is this UAP thing, right? I mean, it's sort of mind blowing. I'm also the technology, of course, and Bitcoin makes me also very happy. But you know, this sort of new revelation that's just around the corner, and what it's gonna tell us about ourselves and about who we are and where we came from and where we're going. Yeah, that makes me really happy. I think that's really cool, and yeah, I'm really happy for my nieces and nephews who are living in this time because of that, right? Not because of the chaos and all that stuff, but that, yeah, that's really cool.
Well, I mean, I would love to see the rings of Saturn. That's one of mine. I'd love to go to space and see the rings of Saturn, and I would like to go to Mars if we colonize it. Like, I mean, you can actually go there, and obviously go to the moon, and just to
Yeah,
orbit like the Earth, just to see it. So the UAP thing, because I've loved UFOs since I was small. I've always been fascinated by them, and the thought of existence outside of, like, once you start understanding solar system and you start understanding the vastness of the universe, then it's like, but I want to go and explore that. I want to have the
yeah,
opportunity to do that. And when UAPs and you see these things and you go, if they are from somewhere else, that means there is a way for us to go somewhere, because now we
yeah,
can go explore, because that's what we are. We've always, as humans, we've always seeked to evolve and explore.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like
And
the
I think
sponsor
that's,
part is a problem, but
yeah, but I think that's also one of our sort of best traits, right? The discovery and explorer side of humanity. And you know, going to new places, even during the time of sort of the colonization, like, but you know, before the colonizers came, right, you got these individuals, like these heroic people who just jumped on the boat with the crew and sailed across the sunset, and found new places and new people, and you know, at the beginning it was just fun and discovery, and you know, getting to know new food and new people and new cultures. And then, of course, after that, it becomes militarized and commercialized, and it's about explanation and exploitation and domination. But the first part is, you know, exploring, discovery. Yeah, and that's I think that's where humanity shines. And I think, you know, with my nephews and nieces, you know, I always say, you know, become a space cowboy, a space cowgirl, right? That is you know, I think that would be really cool. Like, yeah, that in that sense, I would have loved to be born in this time instead of like being. I'm now 46, but you know, if I was like 10 years old or 15 years old, right, that you still can do whatever, yeah, and you can still do it, but you know, then you're still young and stuff. Yeah, that would be really exciting.
well, remember, we have advanced algorithmic assistants now that may help us to understand how to elongate our existence. So how can we rejuvenate ourselves? How can we, get back the youthfulness in our bodies, that we can live longer so that we can explore? Because ultimately, the only way for us to explore would be to have a longer lifespan. So
Yeah,
to increase our lifespan, or be able to put ourselves in stasis, like you see in the movie. So to go into stasis and then being able to arrive somewhere else. Yeah.
yeah, but I think, right, that then has to happen in the next 10 to 20 years. You know, that becomes possible for the masses to have access to that kind of technology. And I think, you know, 10 years, that's, you know, that's, I think they won't give it freely, right? That kind of technology.
I think we already have it, to be honest. I think we already have it.
Yeah, but that is shared with the population, right? With you and me.
Well, let's see.
Uh,
I don't know.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right. That would be
Well,
really
if we have declining population and we aren't replacing quick enough, the option would then be to elongate our lifespan so that we were here for longer. And most people, like want that.
Yeah, I think most people would. Yeah.
But yes, there will be a cost of it. It'll be commercialized, and there will be a cost for, and they probably will give you. It'll probably be a SaaS model. You have to pay every year to get another year. Do you want to pay for another year? And then the rat race will be just like racing to try and get enough credits to pay for the next year.
Yeah,
Or
and you would have to pay in Bitcoin, right? And sats, right? Something valuable.
yeah, stack your sets now.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, I think it will be a really cool, interesting, chaotic, sometimes fearful transition that we will all go through. And yeah, it will be very interesting what will happen also with China and America and Russia, and but also Europe and Bitcoin and fiat currencies and CBDCs. Like, I mean, it will be fun.
It's we're rolling the dice every day.
Yeah, that's true. That's
So I
true.
think, I think you said it eloquently before, that obviously we're um, this excitement and all of this is part of the course, and that we have to go through all this pain to get to, this, to get to something new and a better way of doing things. And then you were also talking the other way you said, which people I think should start taking to heart, is where we talk about we don't know what the world is going to look like and there's chaos. Focus on what you is directly within your radius of control, and don't worry about what's outside of it, because
Yeah,
your radius control overlaps with somebody else's radius of control overlaps. So if we work and we rebuild community like nodes are connected with Bitcoin, we have an opportunity to invoke a lot more change if we work together,
yeah,
rather than trying to shout and scream about something we actually can't control and outside of control. Control what you have in your radius and make that the best place.
yeah. Because if you do it the other way, you become controllable. You become easily manipulatable, and you will have very little influence, and you will feel really bad because you don't have any influence over those things. But like you said, you have to build communities also in your like in your life outside of the digital realm. And if you can connect them to nodes and Bitcoin, then all those nodes will connect with each other. And one of my dreams would be if countries become less. You also alluded to that, like how countries will change. But I think one of the possible trends could also be that they will become smaller, right? That it will be more communal based. I mean, basically, the trend is already there, right? They are already saying, solve your own problems. Most governments are saying, communities solve your own problems because that's good. But basically, they don't want to spend the money, of course. But yeah, I think the trend is already there, and those communities could actually become self-sustaining, self-reliant uh, um, places where you create real citizenship and real engagement and real people. And that's what we need, right? We need real people fixing real things and worrying about real things instead of stuff that we have no control over. Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, I would love a place where I could stake my Bitcoin for citizenship, and then I could revoke that staking anytime. Like, hey, I'll put this in. It's going to increase on a long enough time horizon. It keeps increasing. In other words, it always covers more. So why not? That would
Yeah.
be the utopia, and then you would shift the relationship would change in the fact that they realize that there's a service to be delivered to, and there's an expectation of that service on my economic output. There's an expectation of service, and what would that look like? Which would
There was this book by I think the Prince of Liechtenstein, and it was called "The State in the Third Millennium," and that was basically arguing exactly the same thing, like that states will become more service oriented, but basically that they have to listen to their population, right? So that that's which is actually what they already should be doing. but now they're mostly pretending to be doing it. But yeah, so that you can revoke your citizenship, and that's the reason that the state will listen to what you want, because they don't want to lose you, right? So and they don't want to lose your Bitcoin or your sats. So yeah, I think that is, that I think that's in most cases the future. It will be that or a tyrannical state ruled by CBDCs. Those are sort of the two extremes. So yeah, I prefer the first one.
I think it'll probably be a mixture of the two, but it's something that crossed my mind while you were talking there. Is imagine not only staking your Bitcoin for residency or citizenship, imagine actually staking it for who you want the president to be. So you stake your Bitcoin as your vote, and this is the person I want.
Nice. Yeah, I like it. Let's do it. Yeah, let's get sane people in power.
Yeah, well, same people, but the game is still the same. If people are unwilling to go and learn about things, you're going to have the same problem whereby if I'm the loudest and the shiniest, you're going to come for me. It's the same as that Black Mirror episode with the bear. Like,
Yeah,
it's the exact same premise, is that like the showman shiny new thing is the thing that gets everyone's attention and gets the votes, but it's not actually the best thing for you. And then you can see how it's actually a puppet and not something else is controlling you. It's not actually that person or that thing.
no, definitely. Black Mirror shows. Yeah, that's a very cool show. Yeah.
Well, the new season's out now, isn't it? Or coming out on Netflix?
Yeah, I think it's coming out. I haven't seen it yet, but I think it's on my watch list. Yeah, yeah. And if people haven't seen it, go watch Black Mirror. Right? It's every episode is separate, and they have some mind expanding theme, and it cuts pretty close sometimes. Yeah, often actually.
It's crazy how close it is to what we are experiencing or have experienced already. So
they got some good writers. Yep.
I think the writers are good. I think people can write those. I mean, yes, the writers are good. I think there's definitely some privileged access for those ideas to emerge. There's definitely privileged access.
Yeah. Well, that's a recurring thing, right, with movies and series. That the priming that sometimes goes on in those things, with sci-fi, but also Stanley Kubrick and yeah, what do they know? Do they know something, right? Somebody Ridley Scott, I think, was sort of the new Stanley Kubrick. The movies that he made, especially at the start of his career, I think were very sort of prescient, almost too prescient. Yeah. Black Mirror might be a part of that too.
I really enjoy Black Mirror. It's one of my I like it. It's very thought provoking. There's a lot to think about afterwards, because there's the thing with Black Mirror is there's so many layers to it. That's the thing, and you're thinking like, but what? But and then you keep going deeper and deeper into, and yeah. So what I wanted to do at the end of before we get on to the final scribble, I really wanted to say thank you very much, Nick, for your time today. But not only your time today, but your time that you give everybody, because what a lot of people don't actually know is not that you also have a platform that people can come out like myself and create content, whether it be live or pre-recorded. You also do all of that training in the background. You actually show people how to use it. You give them the tips and tricks. And then you also have your own shows where you give a variety of different pieces of information. So I want to thank you for all the work that you do that goes unseen often by a lot of people, and that all the shows that are on your platform at the moment, it's not easy to cultivate those relationships and to help those people to succeed. So I want to give you your flowers and your kudos for helping people like not only myself, but everyone else to build out and to have a voice in this very noisy and busy space. So I wanted to say thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you for those really nice and kind words. And that's why we do it. I mean, that's why I do it. And I think that's also why Jan does it. So, thank you for that.
No, I'm saying thank you to you for it.
I say thank you for your thank you.
Started with you and Jan. Remember that it always started
Yeah.
with you. People, we often people forget that you stand on the shoulders of giants, and I wanted to make sure that people understood that most of this content wouldn't be there without you and Jan building this. So without this platform, people wouldn't have that opportunity. So you've given so many people an opportunity. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad it is turning into such a beautiful thing, right? So many people taking advantage of the opportunity and building something really great. So yeah, I'm glad the dream is coming true.
So the final scribble is the last part, which is a tradition on the show, where I ask you to explain yourself and your journey in either a word or a phrase.
I came up with one.
Let's go.
Yeah. Well, it's actually one that we always used at the start of Bitcoinlive for years. There were two phrases, but I want to use one of those, and that was "makes you wonder." And that sort of encapsulates, also what we're about, right? Like this whole conversation that we had about, geopolitics, but also UAPs and life and all that kind of stuff. Now, you want people to wonder about things. Life is so much more than what we think it is, and that phrase really encapsulates that idea.
Well, that's amazing. So, and there's also duality to wonder because it's about seeking wonder, but also being in awe and in the wonderment of something. So
Yeah.
that's amazing. Do you have a question that you'd like to give to the audience? Something you'd like to know from them?
How they view decentralized media in the future, like what do they think when they hear that, right? What does that mean? What does that slogan or that word or that sentence mean to people? Like what comes to mind, and how would they want to see it take shape? Right? How can we decentralize it more or engage more people? And yeah,
How they want it to be, or what they think of it at the moment? Decentralized media.
yeah, that latter, especially that latter part. Like what comes to mind when they hear it? Like how do they see that? When you say decentralized media, what comes to mind?
Yeah.
I guess that's the right way to say it.
Okay. So, what does decentralized media mean
Yeah,
to you?
yeah,
Cool. Very good question. I don't know what it means to me yet.
yeah. No,
I'd have
but I
to
think
think about it.
engage people on that question is, I think, important, right? Because if we want to move forward and to turn this into a real thing, right? I think it helps that people start thinking about what that actually is or means, and how it can take shape. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the layered approach that for me would be is that when I think about that, I'm thinking about that I censor what I take in. Therefore, there is no censorship. So I am censorship. So it's me taking control of censorship again in decentralized media. I
Yeah.
I I determine how I censor what I take in versus allowing a third party to choose what I am and am not allowed to get into. So
No, I think that's a really really good point, right? Because everyone, always, discrimination has a negative connotation, of course, because we immediately think about, silencing other people, but we all discriminate, right? You cannot function in life without discriminating. You have to separate and distinguish, and to leave things out, right? Otherwise, you cannot operate. So, but if we keep the censorship, like you say, at your personal level, and don't expand it, like, or that I think is the right way to move forward, and that you leave that censorship to everybody else to make their own decisions about what's important, what's not important. That is yeah, I think that's a really good answer, actually. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think a lot of these things stem out of the fact of once you understand Bitcoin, and not to harp on Bitcoin, but to talk more about the philosophy and how it's built out. When you think about it from that perspective, it's about taking control. It's about saying,
Yeah.
I now have control and I have responsibility. So I have self-sovereignty again. And that self-sovereignty comes with responsibility and comes with a certain amount of things that I need to control. So that
Yeah.
censorship is something that's my job. It's my job to censor what I take in. It's my job to do this. It's my responsibility. So I think it's taking responsibility back and being sovereign again.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that one thing that comes along with that is that everything in life is a trade-off, right? So you cannot have everything, right? That's another thing that people often that most people often get wrong. That they think like we want our government to become as big as possible so that we can have everything, right? So and life doesn't work out because then there's like a huge trade-off that you're not aware of, which is sort of coming down the line, coming down the road. Either for you or for your your children. So yeah, there's always a trade-off, right? So you can't have everything, and that's also why you censor and why you have to take responsibility for your actions, right? Because when you do something, you are not doing something else, right? So
Yeah, well, because obviously I moved to Europe, which is very different from the UK, and you learn that there are nuances to every culture, and when you say like we need to the trade-offs, there's always a trade-off, and each country, and there's social contracts in every country.
yeah,
So the social contracts in in the Netherlands between people is very different region to region, and then country to country, your social contracts are different again because of the way your culture is developed. Because that's what a lot of people don't understand is the reason for Europe being divided at times is because so many wars have been fought and there's a lot of animosity and this living memory of events that have happened in previous generations that live on today in history that creates this animosity and this friction. And unfortunately, decentralized, we can't come to a consensus for all of us to prosper in the way that we maybe would want to. But yeah,
yeah.
it's the social contracts are very different all over the world.
But on the to stick with that, like it was also sort of the engine that made Europe prosper, right? And why it boomed out, because that decentralization and that tension between countries is led to the exploration and the eventual domination, which is also has a shadow side, of course, as the trade-offs, right? But it made Europe such successful also. Right. But yeah, that's a living memory, and and also still between the Germans and the Dutch and the Belgians and the English and the Dutch, and you got all these different relationships with people around you, and that must be the same all over Europe for other countries, and yeah, it also makes it fun and interesting. It would be boring if we were all the same and all on the same page.